We're thrilled to have one of Ethereum's co-founders, Joe Lubin, join us here in the flesh. Joe, what do you make of it all, given like where it started and what it is now? You've got a city that's half full of Ethereum people running around, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. Did you see this coming once upon a time?
So first, huge congratulations to John Paller. This did start as a tiny little event and survived some lean years in our ecosystem, but even through the lean years, it grew and grew, and it's a pretty epic event at this point. I think John should let the city of Denver know next year that we're going to have the event, because it's probably going to be bigger, and maybe Ubers can be imported from neighbor states or something like that. It's always been a beautiful event, and it's really taken its place in the firmament of huge or pivotal Ethereum ecosystem events. So, congrats, John, wherever you are. He's probably up in his bat cave.
Yeah, as a journalist, we sort of go to a lot of these, and you kind of, they're crypto conferences, but I'm always struck by how different the vibe is at the ETH ones than the Bitcoin ones. There's less aggression. People are just nicer. What do you think explains that? Does that kind of stem from Vitalik, or why are ETH people not dicks when a lot of Bitcoin people are?
So first, this event is special because it's heavily focused on hackathon, and so it draws in a huge number of people who are builders, and that's probably the answer anyway, in a more generic sense, that Bitcoin was formed by crypto anarchists and crypto financial heads, and they did build a lot of software for quite a while, but the building or biddling ethic has never been quite so pronounced in the Bitcoin ecosystem. The Ethereum, so Bitcoin is cryptocurrency. Ether is a crypto fuel, a crypto commodity that powers transactions and storage on the network. And so Ethereum has always been a platform for building and utilizing applications, and that's a very different crowd. It's a crowd of builders that like to use each other's tools, that like to get together in teams. It is very different from people who just don't trust the system and are trying to protect their assets. And I love those people too, but it's a different vibe.
Interesting. Well, speaking of building, you gave an interesting keynote last night, and the premise, following me on this is interesting. Joe's theory is systems are breaking down. Our political and economic system, our legacy systems, and they're under strain and they're breaking. That's why the world is such a mess right now, which is not a good thing. But you see some hope in the advent of DAOs, and that they're going to almost come to replace governments to a degree. Do you want to kind of unpack that a bit about what exactly is happening and how that's happening?
Yeah, so systems are breaking down. I started my talk by saying something like, at the end of an 80-year debt and generational supercycle, generational as defined by a couple of social scientists named Strauss and Howe, the world is an economic, social, and political mess, and we need a new organizing principle. So yeah, it's painful, it's unpleasant, but the old organizing principle, top-down command and control, centralized trust systems, has taken humanity very, very far. We've built amazing places like this in amazing cities, and civilization is impressive, but it's also not what it could be. So we can do much better. Essentially, somewhere in that speech I said something like, the power has always been with the people, but we just didn't have mechanisms that enabled capital to be gathered from the people, and therefore power to be gathered from the people, and then utilized in governance and decision making to create new value. the decision-making mechanisms have always been vertical and very narrow. And oops, we forgot to return all that new value that we created broadly to the people from whence it came. And so now with decentralized protocol systems, we can essentially have decision-making that's broad in real time. We can have automated and objective trust systems at the base trust layer of the system. And we can have automated mechanisms that once new value is created, it can be disseminated automatically as broadly as makes sense. And so protocols, decentralized organizations. So protocols do all of that in an automated fashion without reliance on subjective judgment or human intervention. DAOs bring people into the mix because we're people, it's all about people, and create mechanisms of staking or transparent voting proposals and voting systems that enable us all to participate more broadly and not improperly manipulate systems.
Yeah, this stuff is fascinating to me. I was talking to a big investor yesterday, one of these kind of like billionaire Silicon Valley guys, and he's betting that that's going to be the next couple of years we're going to see these tools coming to communities of all stripes. It might be gamers, it might be animal lovers, and the difference now, we could organize ourselves in the past through social media, but now there's an economy built in too, which is a very powerful thing, and you can finance yourself apart from states and traditional organizations. But in looking at DAOs, some of the stories make my skin crawl a little bit in that, in theory, it's great. This is this utopian, decentralized community, but some of them seem to be devolving into like tyrannies of people slashing each other and, hearing stories of people working for free and being cut out and stuff like that. So, legacy governments are under strain right now, but still there are some base layers of, democracy and social safety nets and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, before we jump with 2 feet into DAO land, how do we design them in a way so that people will not get screwed over and abused?
Yeah, so on the internet, there isn't much accountability for your behavior. On planet Earth, there isn't much accountability for your behavior. We have police, we have our friends, we have journalists, and these are really soft mechanisms of accountability. Protocols that automate how something should happen transparently and guarantee that that's going to happen. Those are good mechanisms where you don't even need accountability. It's just that's almost a law of physics in society. On the internet, it's a bunch of primates who just got out of the jungle or the cave who are really interested in stealing something from other people or flinging poo at other people, just doing what primates do. And where we're going as a society is setting up these systems that, again, are transparent, that enable the tracking of people's histories, that enable clarity in what has gone down in a social context, in a DAO, for instance. And we're just emerging into this era where we can have pretty broad, deep, rigorous accountability for a lot of our actions. And the mechanisms of DAOs aren't really there yet to bring that sort of expressiveness and that level of granularity to human interactions, and so they're just starting to enable us to do things like make proposals and vote and establish online persistent identities where we've put a whole lot of stake into those identities, like profile pictures, like NFTs. And so right now, if I have a profile on the internet, it can be anonymous, and I can shoot witticisms and nasty statements at people, and then I can just end that persona and do the same thing from another persona. And those are actually businesses that people in different industries use. They set up these different sort of cutout personas, and they snipe at different issues. And so in the decentralized future, it's going to cost a lot, or you're just not going to have the legitimacy to do that from a bunch of fake personas.
Interesting. So here, let's try this another way. Give me a DAO you think that is doing it right, because I think models are helpful. That's the same with legacy governments. America had a revolution and founded a new type of government, and it became a light to the world. It sounds cheesy, but it's a new, improved form of government. And it seems we're in this very nascent form with DAOs, of various DAOs trying different things. But who's doing it right? Or if you want to point to a DAO that's figuring it out, granted, yeah, we're still kind of coming out of the cave as primates, and it's messy, but we're learning fast. So point me to a DAO or two that's kind of doing it right.
So I, believe it or not, don't have time to spend many of my waking hours inside of DAOs, but I know of reputations of people and DAOs. So Gitcoin is doing a great job sort of exiting their centralized business to a decentralized DAO. The bankless people are people of great creativity and integrity, and bankless DAO is a favorite of a lot of people. We actually have a project at Consensus Mesh called Sobel, where we're creating interfaces inside a sort of dashboard to different DAOs, and Brian Peters is our DAO cartographer, so he's mapping some of the better DAOs. Gnosis is another tremendous project that has essentially taken its treasury and moved the bulk of the treasury into a DAO just to create a more broadly governed ecosystem around technologies that they care about.
Well, speaking of Consensus Mesh, which I think most of you probably know is, sort of a...
Yeah, shouldn't we do a disclosure or something like that?
Yeah, by the way, that's my boss or my owner technically, but I don't really have to listen to him because I work for Decrypt, I'm the executive editor, and Joe has done a fantastic job of leaving us alone, so kudos to that.
So at Consensus, we try in leadership to be servant leaders, where we facilitate whatever needs to be facilitated for the people that we're responsible for, and so I work for Dan.
Yeah, and that's appreciated, because as a journalist out there right now, it's hard because there's a lot of antagonism towards the media and, in the Trump era and stuff like that. So, at Decrypt, we're lucky to have an owner that leaves us alone. I can write something Joe might absolutely hate, and I won't even know that. So, so kudos to that. But, I'm not here to talk about Decrypt, although it's a great publication, read it. But tell us what else is under the hood at Consensus Mesh. What's kind of the exciting projects, or, what are the sort of star startups coming up right now?
So Consensus Mesh is, it does have a pretty heavy DAO focus recently. So there's a project that used to be called Open Law that built online legally enforceable agreements. They started putting together a DAO construct or a DAO operating system a couple of years ago now, and they've turned out a whole bunch of different DAOs, starting with the Lao, which is a DAO that is based or anchored into the laws of Delaware, legal DAO. There's this concept called a Ricardian contract, where you can have legally enforceable agreements pointing to a DAO, pointing to a smart contract on the blockchain, and the smart contract on the blockchain points to legally enforcing agreements, and it's all put together by a brilliant man named Aaron Wright, who's a professor of law at Cardozo and writes software. And so this project has put together the Lao and a liquidity DAO and a DAO that owns lots of NFTs, like a shocking number of NFTs, and a handful of other ways of either forming capital or creating new businesses. There's a new one called Beats that's focusing on the music industry.
I've asked you some softballs here, so I should probably ask you a harder one. Ethereum gas fees are way too high, and they're making it the whole Web3 inaccessible to a lot of people. When is that going to sort of be solved? We know, the the new version of Ethereum is going to fix that, and the layer 2s are doing well. But currently, it's still, if you want to go tell someone, hey, try this out, the first thing they're going to discover is like, oh my God, I just got soaked for $50 to do a transaction. And remember, Web3 was supposed to solve this and get rid of transaction fees. So, what's your roadmap for the kind of the congestion and gas fee crisis to be fixed?
So, so what you're saying is that Ethereum is very successful and that it has brought more activity to it than it can handle without implementing surge pricing. We have had some moments of pretty extreme surge pricing where the cost of a transaction has been $100 or $200. And in a sense, that's a problem. It's also the very early days of the development of a new technology. But we have a whole bunch of other platforms, that many of which are good technology, other candidate layer 1s, layer 2s that are developing on Ethereum, and on Ethereum proper at layer 2, or sidechains that are quasi layer 2. We're bringing hundreds and thousands and soon tens of thousands of transactions to satisfy the demand. Meanwhile, there are projects like Binance Smart Chain and Solana and Avalanche and Near who are bringing new ways of building things on blockchain, which are enabling other people to onboard themselves into the ecosystem. And I think that's very valuable. The future architecture of Web3 probably looks like, the future modular architecture probably looks like a base security layer, a massively decentralized security layer. And Ethereum is way in the lead on that. And then a bunch of different modules that are different kinds of execution environments, different kinds of programming environments. And then since these different execution environments need a lot of guaranteed data availability in order to benefit from the full security guarantee of Ethereum, we need these data guarantee modules, and it's likely that Ethereum will provide a lot of that, especially after the merge. So we're seeing Ethereum evolve from being a place where you run your decentralized applications to a place where you plug in entire blockchain systems like L2s, and even some of the L1s right now are probably going to need, for economic reasons, to get their security from Ethereum. So we'll probably see some of those migrate to being L2. So the short answer is prices are already down significantly. In the future, when all the applications are running at L2, we're probably going to be talking about cents or sub-penny costs for transactions. But it's still early days. We're building out the ecosystem.
I'm just going to push you on this a bit. I don't know if you're allowed to name a favorite child. You probably don't want to, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What's your favorite layer 2 or sidechain? Who's doing it best?
So I don't actually have a favorite, and we do provide infrastructure and interfaces in MetaMask to a bunch of them. I think it's really important to explore the solution space. So the optimistic versions are really important. The zero knowledge versions are really important, and so it's really early days. It hasn't been decided yet by anybody, and it's just a bunch of good technologies, and we like to work with those companies to facilitate what they're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. We're talking about the future a lot here, but I actually want to step back into the past because a book by Laura Shin's going to drop soon that's full of gossip about the early days of Ethereum. You know, some people come out not looking pretty good. You come out okay, Joe. Gavin Wood, Charles Hoskinson, not so good. They're not going to like this book at all. But I'm just bringing this up insofar as it's so interesting thinking of like you 8 or 12 people in this small space in Switzerland. Take us back to that time, and what are some of your most vivid or favorite memories from then?
We were all drawn to a vision. We all essentially read Vitalik's white paper about a month after he released the white paper. A bunch of us hung together on Skype for a few weeks, and then Anthony Diorio, who's one of the named co-founders, rented a place in Miami, and we all glommed together in that house for something like 10 days. And it's not like a normal project or a normal company where you do things like interviewing. You select who you want to work with for the next few years. And so we were all of different backgrounds drawn to a very powerful idea. And we all got along really very well, I think, for about 3 months, 4 months. And then things started to devolve in terms of some interpersonal relationships. Bottom line, we all believed in how powerful the idea was. Vitalik, at age 19 and 20, is a brilliant person in many different disciplines, and he was actually a remarkably good leader because he would listen, he'd take in the information, he'd assimilate, and then he would make decisions whenever decisions needed to be made. And so there were some high energy dynamic times. They're portrayed in some different books, and I don't think anyone's really gotten it right. And the reasons why people were removed from the project weren't actually publicly stated accurately. And so I think we all know what happened, and the only thing that's really important is that a bunch of people got together to give life to a really powerful idea, and that powerful idea may end up becoming the economic, social, and political foundation for the planet for a bunch of years.
Yeah, and that's how it goes, right? Like, I like that. You did it, and big ideas attract smart people who have fiery personalities. And any startup, any new government, there is going to be that sort of tension and explosion stuff. Remember, Vitalik tweeted a few months ago, like, "Oi, 8 founders. If I could have done it differently," but obviously it worked out all the same.
Can't do it differently.
Well, yeah. Looks like
I mean, when a society gets to a certain point of development, it's not going to be the investment bankers that are going to try to change things. It's going to be people who've had different, sometimes complicated experiences that would like to see things done in a different way, and we had a good amount of that talent on the project.
Neat. It looks like we're out of time, but Joe, I want to give you the last word. Any kind of final message to the people who gather here in Denver every year, and what's going to happen next, or just tell them how you're feeling.
Well, I guess thank you all for your passion, for your interest. It's very clear that the paradigm shift to a world of automated trust, to a world of global decentralized finance, to a world of re-architecting everything on those two foundations is underway. It's going to be challenging, but it's actually been remarkably smooth so far. We predicted that it would be a real battle a number of years ago as entrenched interests found their ways to be challenged. But the ideas are so profound, and the changes will be so positive that it's actually going remarkably well. So paradigm shift is on. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Joe.